The material frequency operator is quite simple in comparison to the two previous operators that we've looked at. Its role is simply to apply your picked material and a certain proportion of the material IDs to your particles. Think of it this way: if you had a multi-sub-object material with 3 materials in it, i.e. apples, oranges and peaches, and you wanted 75% of your particles to be apples, 20% of your particles to be oranges, and 5% of your particles to be peaches, you would use these values in the operator. You would use 7.5 for the apples, 2 for the oranges, and 0.5 for the peaches. You can actually see this here in the actual setup that I've got here. I've got 7.5 for the red teapots, 2 for the orange teapots, and you can see 0.5 for the yellow teapots. And as you can see, this proportion is represented here now seen. You should also appreciate that the numbers do not have to actually add up to 100 or 10, as you can see in this case. Instead, they actually represent a ratio of one ID to another. So it's the ratio of the numbers that is actually important, and not the scale of them. So in other words, 75 and 25 is the same as using 7.5 and 2.5. It doesn't really matter the floating point scale of the numbers. What's actually important is the ratio. So let's have a look at the options that we have. The first option is assign material, and this option allows you to turn on the material assignment. If you have this turned off, the material IDs will be assigned, but the actual material parts of the material that you specified here won't actually be applied to your teapots or particles, wherever they may be. The second option is the actual pick button itself, where you can actually click and pick a material from here. Alternatively, you can do the same as we've done in other material operators. You can just drag the material from the material editor and drop it into there. And as I've said before, drop that in as an instance, and you have a live link between the two then. Below that you have assign material ID, and obviously when that's active, it'll actually assign the material IDs to your particles. You have the show in viewport option. That basically actually displays the material IDs on your teapot. If I turn that off, you can see it's just using the first material ID. I'll turn that back on again. And below that you have a number of submaterials, and you can see it's set at 7. That's actually derived from the material that you've assigned. So in this case, you've actually got 7 materials in the multi-sub-object material, and you can see that that's actually reflected here. You'll notice actually I can't pick it and change it, because that's actually defined in the material itself. This is just to give you an idea of how many materials you have to work with, so you don't bother changing material IDs over 7. The last option is the uniqueness, and you've got the usual seed, and if I hit that, you can see it's actually generating a new seed, and you get in a different random result. But of course, obviously, every time you generate a new random result, you get the same proportion of particles being assigned the material IDs. So just before we finish off on this operator, you can see I've got some other versions of the frequency operator set up. You can see this one is actually, although it says 50-50, it's not actually 50-50. You can see I've got the first material ID with a value of 100, and I've got the second material ID with a value of 50. If you wanted to think of that in percentage terms, you actually have 66% here, and you have 33% here. So you can actually see you've got 2/3 of the teapots are red, and 1/3 of the teapots are actually yellow. I'll just turn that off and go on to the last example. And in the last example, you can see I've used 25%. So material ID has got 25, material ID has got 25, ID 5 has got 25. And there's actually a typo here. This is 27. That's actually 25 as well. Now, just to demonstrate that it's a ratio rather than fixed numbers that actually matters here, it's not a percentage, I can actually change these to 1, 1, 1 and 1, and you get the same result. You actually have 1/4 of each ID is assigned to the particles. So that's it. That's the material frequency operator. it's very simply given to you to allow you to control the assignment of material IDs with a certain proportion. Okay, now that we've looked at that, let's move on to the last operator in the set, which is slightly different from the others in that actually it's used to apply UV mapping rather than materials. So let's have a look at the mapping operator now.